Hello, everyone. First of all, I'm sincerely sorry for not joining you guys on Zoom as I'm traveling for spring break. Hope you guys have wonderful spring break too. So let's start today's lecture of Rishi Patanjali Sutras. So let's begin with Namaste first. Greetings to everyone. And after venturing into Bhagavad Gita last month, we are coming back to Rishi Patanjali's knowledge of yoga. We'll be covering Sutras 17 to 28 from chapter 1. If you have already gone through the slides, you may have noticed that the slides contain a bit more write-up than previous classes. The reason is that today's sutra tackles the complex topic of samadhi. Samadhi is the final stage in Rishi Patanjali's knowledge of yoga. We could also say that samadhi is the final resting stage for yogis who practice yoga. Everything that we do as yogis and yoginis or practitioner of yoga is to reach the stage of samadhi. Samadhi is a foreign concept for almost everyone outside of the Indian subcontinent. In ancient India, people of all socio-economic classes used to split their lives into 4 parts, namely youth, adult, midlife, and old age. Youth was for learning, adulthood for working, marriage, procreation, midlife for establishing or continuing family's tradition, and in old age, complete renunciation of family and society in search of the Supreme Being. Yoga was practiced throughout the first 3 stages of life, while the 4th stage was focused on gaining samadhi. The purpose of life in ancient India was to gain samadhi, and this purpose was true till the late 18th century. Unfortunately, with the British era in India, the yogic knowledge was replaced with an education system, which was built on the objective of creating slaves. Today, Indians, along with several awakened souls worldwide, are trying to link themselves with yoga. Yet, the knowledge of samadhi continues to elude most of us. My attempt today is to explain samadhi in the simplest manner possible, while also revealing the methods of achieving samadhi. So the question is, what is samadhi? Samadhi was briefly discussed during Rishi Patanjali's Ashtanga Yoga, explanation of yamas and niyamas. Samadhi was actually the 5th niyam discussed in our earlier class. Also, Rishi Patanjali has dedicated an entire chapter on samadhi, that is chapter 3. But in today's class, we are basically getting a teaser, or we can say a high-level view of the final stage of yoga, which is samadhi. The simplest way of explaining samadhi is self-awareness. This concept of self-awareness is easy to understand, but nearly impossible to realize. What's the difference between the understanding and realization? When used as noun, understanding is mental, sometimes emotional process of comprehension, assimilation of knowledge, which could be subjective in nature, while realization is the act of realizing, an act of figuring out or becoming aware of. In short, understanding comes from gaining knowledge, while realization comes through experiencing that knowledge. The concept of samadhi or self awareness is easy to understand. We are not the body or the mind, but the soul. In the scientific community, the concept of the soul is debatable, as medical professionals have deciphered hundreds and thousands, if not millions, of human bodies, and never ever have they found a soul. As we will learn in Sutra 27 later, anything that we cannot understand through our senses, we question the validity of it. As we know, there are five senses: hear, see, smell, taste, and touch. We cannot see the soul, we cannot hear the soul, feel, smell, or taste the soul. And this is the reason we question if the soul even exists. But as the practitioner of yoga, we know that the soul not only exists, but is the energy that powers our body. Every religious scripture has acknowledged the existence of a soul, and the medical industry is finally warming up to the idea of soul. So to realize that I am a soul and not this body or the mind, that is samadhi. And this is the final stage for all yogis and yoginis. The purpose of Rishi Patanjali's Yogic Sutra is to take willing yogis from the initial stage to the final stage of yoga, which is samadhi. We understand that we are the soul, but why is it so difficult to realize that we are the soul? Centuries ago, people used to renounce everything that they had and pursue this final stage of yoga, that is samadhi. They renounce all their material possession, disconnected from all their worldly relations. They would give up all comforts, walk deep into the woods or on mountains to find solitude, and chant mantras given by their guru to achieve self-awareness, samadhi. In present day, we would greatly struggle with such discipline. We are intricately involved in worldly relationships, and the thought of sacrificing all materialist possessions and comforts would seem nearly an impossible task for us. And finally, try finding solitude in today's world. That itself would be a challenge. These are the reasons why we may acknowledge ourselves as the soul, but to realize that might take lifetime, if not many lifetimes. So let's look at Sutra 17 of Book 1. And that sutra says, Vitarka Vichar Ananda Asmita Rupa Anugumat Sampragnataha. So now let's look at the definition of what is Rishi Patanjali is trying to tell us. So Rishi Patanjali starts with sampragnat samadhi, which is a type of samadhi gained through achieving higher knowledge. The word sampragnat is further broken down into sam and pragnat. Sam means along with, and pragnat means beyond intelligence. So, the samadhi gained through knowledge that is received through a higher level of intelligence is called sampragnat samadhi. We defined intelligence as information gained through the five sense organs and then interpreted into knowledge. As the five sense organs are limited, our knowledge gained is limited as well. The word pragnat means knowledge gained through higher level of intelligence without the use of sense organs. So when this samadhi is achieved, sampragnat is gained. Also, there are three stages of samadhi: dharana, dhyan, and samadhi. Without dharana and dhyan, samadhi cannot be achieved. Dharana is contemplation on an object, when dhyan is concentration, and samadhi is achieved through the concentrated contemplation of an object. In this sutra, Rishi Patanjali gives us 4 different types of object to contemplate and concentrate upon to achieve the samadhi. These 4 objects are vitark, vichar, anand, and asmita. So the first word that Rishi Patanjali uses in Sutra 17 is vitark. So now let's look at the definition of it. What is vitark? So these are the objects that we can comprehend through our 5 senses. For example, an object that we can see, like a lit candle, idol, or object we can feel, like our heartbeat, or the inhalation and exhalation, an object that we can hear, like flute, ocean waves, etc. We may have already heard of some of these meditation types, such as Tratak meditation, where we focus on lit candle, Soham meditation, where the inhalation and exhalations are the focus, and different chakra meditation, which focuses on the various chakras and their bij mantras that we recite. So dharana and dhyan are not foreign concept to the yogis or yoginis. Dharana, which is contemplation on an object, we do that with a lit candle anyway. Inhalation, exhalation, chakras, etc. We practice all that. And dhyan is concentration. To achieve samadhi using vitark, that is objects, is called the savitark sampragnat samadhi. So now let's look at the second word of Sutra 17, and that word is vichar. Vichar is to contemplate upon a thought. In vichar, there is no need for the sense organs. Thought is mental, from memory. It is very important here to differentiate between alive and still memory. For concentration purposes, an object has to be constant and as stable as possible. If we select a live memory, that is an event, then the event runs in our consciousness as a motion picture. This event may be constant but not stable. On the contrary, an image from memory is constant as well as stable. For achieving samadhi through vichar, that is savichar sampragnat samadhi, the needed approach is to contemplate and concentrate upon an image from our memory. Now let's look at the third word that Rishi Patanjali has used in Sutra 17, and that is Anand, or we can say Ananda. Anand is to contemplate on the feeling of bliss. Such moments are rare in our life and thereby should be easy to contemplate upon. It is important to define bliss here, as we use this word quite often and usually in wrong context. Bliss is not the same as happiness, joy, or pleasure that we feel through our five senses. Bliss is the feeling of happiness without the use of any sense organ. The first time a mother holds her child in her arms, that's bliss. The first time a baby looks at her mother and says, Mama, and the feeling mom feels, that's bliss. Having family present for the biggest moment of your life and to see the pride, love, joy in their eyes, that's bliss. The first time we were able to see our relatives after COVID and were able to hug them, and the way we felt after that, that's bliss. Bliss is something divine that is felt, an impression that leaves a permanent mark in our memory, a feeling that warms our hearts, smile automatically adorns our lips, and tears line up in our eyes. That's bliss. Trying to explain bliss is like trying to explain a picture perfect sunset. Words are just not enough. If we are lucky to have such an event in our lives, the bliss we felt at that time, to contemplate and concentrate on that very feeling will allow us to achieve sa anand sampragnat samadhi. And the final word is asmita. This object is explained as the feeling of I am. I would not recommend anyone to practice this type of contemplation without a help of spiritual guru, teacher. In this type of dharana, contemplation, we need to concentrate at the third eye, which is the space between the two eyebrows. There are dangerous perils in this type of contemplation, and we need a guru who has tread this path before to guide us through this type of practice. Also, to caution further, there are only a handful of spiritual teachers in today's day and age that could guide one through the Sasmita Sampragnat Samadhi. And finding such a guru is like finding a needle in a haystack. There are far more people who fake themselves as teachers, who have achieved Susmita Sampragnat Samadhi. And it is very difficult to separate the fake ones from the real ones. So best is to practice Samadhi through Vitark, Vichar and Anand. So to conclude Sutra 17, to achieve Samadhi, which is self-awareness, we need Dharana and Dhyan, which is contemplation and concentration on an object. We can use one of four objects, namely Vitark, Vichar, Anand, and Asmita. Now let's look at Sutra number 18. Rishi Patanjali says, Viram pratyas abhyas purvaha sanskar sesonyah. So now what does this mean? Viram pratyay. Rishi Patanjali explains the one major hurdle in achieving self-awareness or samadhi. He says that samadhi can be achieved by practicing supreme knowledge gained through experience. However, priority or importance is karma, or we can say karma. The word sanskar means karma here. Rishi Patanjali clearly states that our karmic debt, our karmic give and take has to be cleared before true samadhi could be achieved. This is the reason Rishi Patanjali uses the word nya. This simply means another. Modern day experts have concluded that Rishi Patanjali is referring to a temporary stage of samadhi here, as final samadhi could only be achieved upon the clearing of all karmic debt. These experts have termed this temporary stage of samadhi as asapragnat samadhi. In Vedic scriptures and throughout time, there are two words often used to describe the plight of humans on this earthly plane. And those two words are karma pradhan, literally meaning karma dominance. Our lives are dominated by our karmas. Every action adds a good karma or bad. Even the action of breathing, without which we couldn't even survive, results in bad karma, as millions of bacteria are killed in every breath of ours. Sant Kabir, a 15th century mystic, once said, Jini jini re buni re chadariya, jini jini, meaning the law of karmas are weaved so intricately in our lives that every single action is caught in its account. Rishi Patanjali states that to achieve final samadhi, a yogi needs to do dharana and dhyan, contemplation and concentration for some time in a day, and then go back to attend his or her daily duties. This seems like we are in catch 22. Achieving samadhi is only possible upon clearing karmic debt, but karmic debt cannot be cleared till we engaged in our worldly duties, which in turn is the reason for the addition of our karmic account. In a question form, how can we achieve final samadhi if we keep adding karmas by engaging in our worldly duties? Rishi Patanjali provides solution to this catch-22 situation in Sutra 19 and 20. So let's look at this Sutra 19. So in Sutra 19, he says, Bhava pratyeyo vedeha prakriti leyanam. Now, what does that mean? Rishi Patanjali asks us to practice pratyeya videha. There is not a single word in the English dictionary to translate videha. However, the word aloof comes close to this word, but is still not the same. To explain videha in a crude way is to say that operate the body and mind in this world to attend to our daily duties while our concentration should be in samadhi. To further explain, the purpose of meditation is to connect our subconsciousness soul with the supreme consciousness. To practice videha, we need to cultivate a habit of connecting our conscious and subconscious to two different objects. The conscious to the worldly task, action on hand, while the subconscious with the supreme consciousness. How could we possibly do this? And what does this mean? Think of it this way. If an heirloom was passed down to you, and this heirloom was very precious to you, and furthermore, this heirloom is worth millions of dollars, what would you do to keep this heirloom safe? How many times in a day would you think of this heirloom? How many times would you check on it? Would you keep it in your house? Maybe a safe or maybe in a bank? Would you worry that someone may steal it from you? Maybe a family member or an outsider who knows its value. How worried would you be? Now think of your meditation, your practice towards achieving self-awareness, that is samadhi, as that rare and precious heirloom. If you don't practice dharana and dhyan, that is, if you don't practice contemplation and concentration every day, you may lose this rare and precious opportunity to achieve samadhi. If you indulge in the five senses and create innumerable karmas, then the opportunity to achieve samadhi becomes even more difficult to realize. If we think of samadhi, that is self-awareness, as the precious heirloom, then we will conduct our day-to-day activities with focus on keeping the heirloom within our control. Rishi Patanjali refers to this dual consciousness in Sutra 19 by using the word videha. We have to attend to our worldly duties, but keep our attention in our samadhi, our precious heirloom. Worldly activities require our attention, but without considering the effects of our activities on our practice of samadhi, self-awareness, we would create unnecessary karmas and become susceptible to failures in our practice of samadhi. Now, how can we achieve dual consciousness? How can we keep our attention in worldly duties as well as our samadhi practice? So Rishi Patanjali answers this question in Sutra 20. He says, Shraddha Virya Smriti Samadhi Pragna Purvak Etare Sham. So now let's look at what does he mean by that. Shraddha means faith, Virya is energy, and Smriti is memory. But in this case, memory for self existence, self awareness. First and foremost, we need to have complete faith in Rishi Patanjali's Yoga Sutras that by following the practice of dharana and dhyan, contemplation and concentration, we can achieve samadhi. Second is virya. We need the energy to continue on this path. From personal experience, the amount of energy needed to tread this path is incredible. As we fail multiple times in our practice, the regularity required is not always met. The indulgence in the five senses at times overtakes our ability to keep our dual consciousness in check. You all must have heard the story of the king and the ant. Once a king went to battle. He was on the verge of losing the battle when he fled to save his own life. He hid in a cave where he saw an ant who was attempting to climb a steep and slippery wall. Then ant fell in its first attempt, but caught up and tried climbing again. This went on for a while, where the ant kept falling and climbing, till at the end, the ant made its way to the top of the wall. The king got inspired by her ant's action, went back to the battle and won. Moral of the story is try and try till you succeed. The path of samadhi, self-awareness, is the same one. Having faith, meaning having shraddha, is most important, followed by energy to accept failures, but never give up. And third is smriti, that is to remember your objective. Remember that I am not the body or the mind, but the soul. To be self-aware of who I am and what I am trying to achieve. So to conclude, on the catch-22 we faced at the end of Sutra 18, the way to lower our karmic debt is to constantly remember and remind ourselves of the opportunity we have been given of achieving self-awareness. That is samadhi. Next two sutras addresses the timelines of achieving samadhi. Rishi Patanjali is basically answering the question as to when one could achieve samadhi. So in Sutra 21, he says, Tivra samveganama sannaha. This means Rishi Patanjali uses the word samvegnam, which means desire. The stronger the desire, the faster the goal will be achieved. And this is similar to other objectives of our lives, isn't it? Stronger the desire, the faster we achieve our goal. So what does he say in Sutra number 22? He says, Mrudu madhya adimatra tvat tato pivisheshaha. What does this mean? So Rishi Patanjali in Sutra 22 says that there are three types of practitioners. Mrudu, who practices yoga at very slow pace. Madhya, who practices yoga at a moderate to fast pace, while Adimatratva is the one who practices yoga at a very fast pace. Needless to say that the desire of achieving samadhi in Adimatratva is higher than the Madhya, and in Madhya the desire is higher than Mrudu. As desire dictates the speed of achieving samadhi, Adimatratvat will most likely achieve samadhi before Madhya and Madhya before Mrudu. So let's look at Sutra number 23. In this, Rishi Patanjali reinforces on how to lessen our karmic load. He says, Ishwar Prani Dhana Dva, meaning Ishwar is supreme power. Prani Dhanad is to surrender. If we were to surrender to the will of the supreme power, we will be saved from incurring karmic debt. Good times won't make us happy, and sad times won't make us depressed. As consciousness of our action to those events are out of our control. All good and bad are gifts from the Supreme Consciousness, and all that I get from Him is acceptable. If we have this attitude of gratitude, the attitude of utter surrender to the Supreme Power, then we will go into acceptance mode instead of a reactionary mode. And as we know, it is the reactionary stage which results in karmas. Now we will discuss probably the best part of this sutras today. But due to the lack of time though, I may not be able to spend much time here. However, I'm requesting all of you to think about the message in following Sutra 24, which in this Rishi Patanjali says, Klesha karma vipak shehi aparamrishtaha purusha vishesha ishvaraha. In the next few sutras, Rishi Patanjali answers questions on Ishvaraha. We can define Ishwar as a supreme power, supreme consciousness, super consciousness, universal consciousness, divine power, divine energy, or God. Name it as you like. Rishi Patanjali is answering the question, who is Ishwar? Who is God in this sutra? He says that if we could remove klesha, that is disturbances, and karma, then the Purusha, that is the soul, could become Vishesha Ishvaraha, that supreme power. Our soul, Rishi Patanjali says, has the capability to become the supreme consciousness. If we can remain undisturbed by the physical, emotional, and mental disturbances around us, and if we can remove the vipak shehi karmas that are associated with our soul. Vipak shehi are two types of karma. Vipak is the karmic load that we pay off immediately or in a short period of time, while shehi is the karmic load from previous lifetimes. It could take lifetime for us to clear the shehi karmic load unless we follow the instruction from Rishi Patanjali's in Sutra 19, 20, and 23 above. Next, Rishi Patanjali explains further as to how our subconsciousness, that is soul, could become supreme consciousness. So in Sutra 25, he says, Tatra Niratishyam Sarvagya Bijam. Just like the vastness of banyan tree has its beginning in a seed, so does the unlimited knowledge of the Supreme Consciousness resides in our soul. We can access this knowledge through yoga, and the practice of yoga will allow us to realize our true self. The key to unlock the mysteries of ourselves is within us, and the knowledge to use that key to unlock the mysteries resides with yoga. Just like the drop of water merges in the ocean to become the ocean, so does the soul merge with the Supreme Consciousness to become the Supreme Consciousness. There is only one Supreme Being. Each soul on this planet has the ability to merge in this one Supreme Being. These are very powerful statements that he has said here. And in the absence of faith, difficult to comprehend these sutras. It is very important to note that there is no reference to religious context here, as yoga is associated with the human body and not with any religion. Rishi Patanjali then gives us an introduction to Ishwar, that is the Supreme Being. In Sutra 26, he says, Sapurvesha api guruhu kalenan vachedat. How can we comprehend the idea of Ishwar, that is Supreme Being, when we cannot capture his concept within our five senses? We cannot see the Supreme Being, cannot hear, smell, feel, or taste him. He is as aligned to us as our soul or the intellect that's beyond the senses. Medical science cannot run experiments to find either our subconsciousness or the superconsciousness is real or not. At our level, our knowledge is limited to what we can comprehend through our five senses. Anything outside of that is incomprehensible to us. It is to explain this incomprehensible knowledge that we need a guru, a teacher who can guide us on this path of spirituality or this knowledge where we can gain who we are, what we are. Someone that resides in the grips of our five senses, something that we can understand. Rishi Patanjali says, Tasya vachakaha pranavaha, where Tasya means he or Ishwar, Vachak means representative, and Pranava means Om. He says that Om is the representative of Ishwar, Supreme Consciousness. The chant of Om does come within the boundaries of our senses. We can hear Om. We can say Om. And if we chant Om in meditation, we can feel the vibration from Om. With Om as the Guru, teacher, Rishi Patanjali says that we can realize Samadhi, self-awareness, and thereby Ishwar, that is Supreme Consciousness. Finally, Rishi Patanjali gives instruction on what to do with the Guru. Let's look at the next sutra, where he says, Tasya vachakaha pranavaha. And here's the definition of Sutra 27. Since we are a little short, and I think I did go through 27, just forgot to change the slide. Sorry guys about that. So going on to the 28, where he says, Taj japas tadrat bhavanam. And the meaning, the definition of Sutra 28, Rishi Patanjali explained that Om is the representation of Ishwar, superconsciousness. In this sutra, he talks about what to do with Om. In order to surrender to the will of supreme power, Ishwar Pranidhanath, he says, Taj Japaha, meaning chant Om or chanting Om. Tad Artha Bhavanam, with presence of the mind and with meaning. In short, chanting Om in a meaningful and concentrated manner allows the soul to achieve samadhi and thereby supreme consciousness. Sorry, can't answer any questions here, so I'll go back to the definition. So to conclude our discussion today, samadhi, the word that we talked throughout the lecture, samadhi, or self-awareness, is the ultimate goal of practitioners that follow the path of yoga. We could achieve temporary samadhi through dharana and dhyan, contemplation and concentration. However, complete samadhi cannot be achieved till the load of our karma is eliminated. And to eliminate the karmic debt, we need to remember that as practitioners, we have an unique opportunity to achieve self-awareness. Also, to achieve samadhi is dependent on our desire to do so. We also learn that our subconsciousness has the ability of becoming supreme consciousness. And this could be achieved by accepting the knowledge of yoga. Finally, the chant of Om is the key to unlock the secret of self-awareness, samadhi, and thereby superconsciousness. So let's end today's lecture by chanting Om. Namaste, everyone. Have a wonderful weekend.